Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to answer questions like,
Can you tell me which was which?
an astounding 76% of our taste testers said they liked the organic apples better than the conventional ones. Reasons often given were crisp texture, sweeter flavor, and sustained taste. With the coffee, we found that about 6 out of 10 participants liked the organic shade-grown coffee over the conventional coffee. One reason we suspect that the margin wasn't larger was that most people are used to drinking Colombian coffee, which is what the conventional brew was. The organic was grown in Mexico and may have had an unfamiliar or dissatisfying flavor. Nevertheless, the organics came out on top by a fairly large margin, and it matches up with our hypothesis that something that grows slowly and naturally will have more dense sugars and stronger structure, resulting in better taste and nicer texture. And humans aren't the only ones who think so. At the Copenhagen Zoo in 2003, zookeepers noticed that the chimpanzees were eating the organic bananas first, before they'd even touched the non-organic bananas. And even more interesting was that they would peel the conventional ones before eating them, but ate the organic bananas whole. And if you're thinking that taste isn't such a big deal, then there are other reasons to pay attention to what you're eating. A study conducted at the University of Washington took a sample of toddlers, half of whom ate at least 75% organic fruits and vegetables, and the other half ate at least 75% conventional produce. After just 3 days, urine samples tested for metabolite concentrations of organophosphorus pesticides in the urine revealed levels 6 to 9 times higher in the kids who ate conventional produce. But after all those taste tests, we were still puzzled. What was it exactly that made the perfect apple, the perfect coffee? Well, we were only Bio 101 students, so naturally, our next step was to turn to the experts. But what experts? Doc is an entomology professor. Plus, it wouldn't be quite fair for him to give us our research. So who in the world could we consult for some scientific insight? Luckily, TC3 happens to be just a dozen miles from one of the most esteemed agricultural universities in the world, and maybe they'd have some wizard we could talk to with a good bit of authority. So I made a trip to Cornell University and made an appointment with Dr. Ian Merwin, Professor of Horticulture and International Agriculture and world-renowned apple guru, at his office in the Plant Science Building at Cornell. I sat down and asked him for some explanations.
In general, most of the organic pesticides are probably safer for both the consumer and for the soil. Fruit and vegetable foods have higher pesticide residues than any other food group. That's a fact. It's really indisputable. They're also more likely to leach into groundwater or to run off. So anytime you can put essential nutrients into the system in a more sustained release form, it's going to be environmentally a little more desirable, and it's also going to mean that the plant takes it up more slowly, which gives you a different flavored fruit. When it's a little bit hungry, it will typically produce better tasting fruit. A plant which is under somewhat moderate amount of nitrogen stress or a moderate amount of water stress or maybe a little bit of stress from an insect will respond to that stress by allocating more resources to the fruit that they have, and just makes a tremendous difference. Gives you basically somewhat smaller fruit, more sugar, better color. That's probably what your consumers are tasting, because in general, fertilizer sources that an organic grower is going to use tend to release their nutrient content very slowly over time. So with a chemical fertilizer, there's a quick burst of nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium, and then it sort of drops off quickly. So what you get is a tree or a vine that is a little more stressed by these various factors, and that concentrates the flavors in the fruit. Because if the tree has had relatively more nitrogen and relatively more water, then you're going to get a bigger fruit that's bigger because it's essentially has more water. It has what we call lower dry matter content. In most supermarket situations, people want that because the myth, at least, is that everybody will reach for the biggest, reddest apple. My experience has been that people are very interested in flavor, and they can pretty quickly get over the hang up on how big it is and really start to think more about what does it taste like, what does it feel like when you get it in your mouth, what are its textural properties, how concentrated are the flavors. So from the nutritional perspective, if you have less water in the fruit, then you have relatively higher content of everything else, which is going to mean that fruit's going to be harder, it's going to store better. When you bite into it, it's going to be crunchier and firmer. But it also means that if you do a nutrient content analysis, chances are the cells are going to be a little smaller in that fruit. And so on a dry weight basis, you're actually going to have a little bit more calcium, a little more magnesium and zinc and all of these important essential nutrients. And there have been a number of studies that have documented that with organic fruit, that it has a little bit more of the trace element and mineral content.
So what he's telling us is that the more nitrogen and pesticides given to plants, the faster they tend to grow. Organically grown plants tend to struggle through their growth, carrying out slower, more efficient mitosis. And as a precaution for another tough growing season next year, the plants invest a lot more resources into their fruits. The sugars are more dense, and the cell wall structures are more rigid. Plants grown with chemical helpers tend to just manufacture the fruit easily and not struggle, giving you a bigger, stronger crop in less time, but with less taste. We decided to try to be good scientists and find out if other researchers agree with this idea. As it turns out, they do, overwhelmingly. For example, a famous study done at Washington State University found several things true of organic apples. Organic apples matched conventional ones at fruit yield, size, grade, and tree growth. Organics bettered the conventionals in that they had less environmental impact, better soil quality, were more energy efficient, and above all, more profitable. Most importantly to some was the finding that organic apples tasted sweeter and less acidic than conventionally grown apples in their taste tests, the same result as ours. And according to the USDA, a conventionally grown apple is likely to contain residues of at least 4 pesticides, and some individual apples had as many as 14 different residues. All in all, as we hinted at earlier, our research confirms that taste is pretty far down the list of reasons to buy organic food. So we've learned that conventional large-scale farming uses artificial fertilizers that expunge the soil of nutrients, cause the plants to grow faster than they want to, and creates pollution in both our skies and drinking water. Conventional farming also uses all sorts of chemical pesticides on the plants and in their soil, and by the time the plant is ready for harvest, it's full of chemicals, inside and out. It's estimated that close to half of U.S. consumers use organic products, and the number of certified organic farmers in this country is increasing almost 20% every year. Many experts in agriculture and business alike agree that a large-scale shift to organic farming would not only increase the world's food supply, but might be the only way to eradicate hunger. So although organics tend to taste better than conventional foods, it's important to remember the even bigger issues of the wear and tear that organic food production saves on us all. The enhanced taste is just a nice side effect.
A is actually conventional and B is actually cheap, which there's no judgment either way on it, but
Edit this one out.